The Philippines is sitting on a jackpot so big, it makes lottery winners look broke. I'm talking about oil and gas reserves worth, wait for it, over $26 trillion. That's trillion with a T. To put that into perspective, that's more money than Apple, Microsoft, and Google combined. And still enough left over to buy Elon Musk's Twitter account 10 times just to delete it again for fun. But here's the catch. This oil isn't sitting on land. Nope. It's buried under one of the world's most contested bodies of water, the South China Sea, or as Manila insists, the West Philippine Sea. And that's where the story gets juicy, because when you mix energy, geopolitics, and a dash of China versus the US, you get a geopolitical soap opera with higher stakes than Game of Thrones. Now, according to the US Geological Survey, the Spratlys alone could hold over 17 billion barrels of oil. That's more than Kuwait, one of the world's top oil producers. Meanwhile, the U.S. Energy Information Agency says the South China Sea could be sitting on nearly 200 trillion cubic feet of natural gas. If you're wondering how much that is, let's just say it could power the Philippines, Japan, and South Korea for decades. Of course, Beijing claims the whole sea belongs to them because of their infamous 9-dash line, which is basically a squiggly doodle they drew on the map and told everyone, "Yep, this is ours now." It's the international equivalent of a kid circling the best slice of cake at a party and saying, "Called it." Here's where it gets even more intense. China isn't just claiming. They're actively patrolling, intimidating, and even blocking attempts at exploration. Meanwhile, Vietnam, Malaysia, and Indonesia are pushing forward with oil and gas projects despite the risks. And the Philippines? For years, Manila hit the pause button. They suspended oil exploration in disputed waters back in 2014, scared of poking the Chinese dragon. But that pause just hit a hard reset. In 2024, the U.S. openly voiced its interest in helping the Philippines tap into this multi-trillion-dollar treasure chest. That's right, Washington wants in on the oil and gas party. Philippine companies that hold concessions in the West Philippine Sea are already eyeing joint ventures with American firms. And this isn't just about money, it's about strategy. Because let's be honest, the second U.S. oil rigs show up, China's bully the little guy routine becomes a lot trickier, and Manila needs this badly. Why? Because their only major gas field, Malampaya, which powers around 40% of Metro Manila's electricity, is set to run dry by 2027. Imagine 13 million people suddenly paying sky-high bills just to keep the lights on. That's not just an inconvenience. That's an economic crisis waiting to explode. So now, the Philippines faces a choice. Keep playing it safe and risk running out of gas, literally. Or double down, partner with the US and Japan, and finally start cashing in on the black gold beneath their feet. And let's be real, the US isn't getting into this for charity. This is part of a broader industrial strategy. Washington wants to undercut China's dominance in Asia, secure new energy sources for allies, and make sure Manila doesn't turn to Beijing for help. For the Philippines, this could mean $100 billion in investments flowing in, transforming its underfunded, underexplored oil and gas industry into something powerful. But here's the kicker. The closer the Philippines cozies up to the US, the more furious China gets. In fact, Beijing has already blasted Manila's growing military and economic ties with Washington, calling America a threat to regional peace, which is a bit rich coming from the country that builds artificial islands, plants military bases on them, and sails Coast Guard ships like bouncers, chasing away anyone who dares to look at the oil. And make no mistake, this isn't just about oil. It's about leverage, security, and influence. Whoever controls the energy under the West Philippine Sea doesn't just control fuel, they control power, literally and politically. Now let's talk about the Reed Bank, also known locally as Recto Bank. If Malampaya is the Philippines' old reliable gas tank, Recto is the brand new supercharged Tesla battery just waiting to be plugged in. We're talking an estimated 5 billion barrels of oil and 55 trillion cubic feet of natural gas. That's the kind of energy jackpot that could flip the Philippines from an importer to a serious regional supplier. But there's a small problem. Actually, scratch that. A giant problem. Reed Bank sits smack in the middle of the West Philippine Sea, right where China's 9-dash line runs through. And Beijing isn't exactly the sharing is caring type when it comes to resources. When Manila briefly tried exploring Reed Bank in 2023, guess who showed up? Yep, the China Coast Guard, flexing harder than a bouncer outside a VIP club. Philippine drill ships were practically harassed off the scene, and the government had to hit pause yet again. But here's the plot twist. President Marcos Jr. has now given the go signal for oil and gas exploration, even in disputed waters. That means Recto Bank is officially back on the table, and China is officially on edge. This is where things get spicy. Analysts are saying the Philippines should launch exploration alongside joint U.S. naval patrols. Imagine drilling rigs backed up by U.S. destroyers cruising nearby. Suddenly, those polite warnings from the China Coast Guard lose a lot of bite. It's like bringing The Rock as your +1 to a bar fight. And here's the geopolitical jackpot. By teaming up with the U.S. and Japan, the Philippines doesn't just unlock oil, it unlocks credibility. It signals to investors that Manila is serious, protected, and open for business. Already, Tokyo and Washington are lining up deals, and energy giants are sniffing around Manila like sharks that smell a trillion-dollar meal. But while the Philippines hesitated, neighbors like Vietnam, Malaysia, and Indonesia didn't. They've been drilling, exploring, and quietly cashing in, despite having their own ugly run-ins with China. Vietnam, for example, has played a clever balancing act, still claiming territory, still drilling, but not slamming the door on Beijing completely. Manila, meanwhile, has been the cautious kid on the block, sitting on billions in buried treasure, but too scared to dig it up. Now, with Malampaya running dry, cautious is no longer an option. Electricity bills are already some of the highest in Asia, and if Manila doesn't make a move soon, blackouts and an economic slowdown could be looming. So what's the long game? By 2040, the Philippines wants to build a fully developed, investment-driven energy sector. That means boosting local oil and gas production, building a competitive natural gas industry, reducing dependence on expensive imports, and ideally becoming an energy exporter instead of a chronic energy beggar. And it's not just about the sea. Other regions like the Sulu Sea and the Cotabato Basin have massive untapped reserves too, areas that, unlike the Spratlys, are undisputed Philippine territory. According to studies, those two basins alone could add hundreds of millions of barrels of oil and confirmed natural gas deposits. That's enough to kickstart an energy boom without even poking China's dragon. But here's the bottom line. The West Philippine Sea is the crown jewel. Whoever controls Reed Bank controls the Philippines' energy future and sends a clear message about who really calls the shots in Southeast Asia. If Manila finally steps up with U.S. backing, China will face a serious dilemma: escalate and risk a confrontation with Washington, or back off and watch billions in resources slip through its fingers. Either way, the Philippines, long seen as the underdog in this game, suddenly becomes the player holding the wild card. And let's be real, when oil, gas, and superpowers collide, the story is never just about money. It's about who lights the world and who gets left in the dark.